Good morning. I'd like to welcome you all to the Town of Hilton Head Island Community Services and Public Safety Committee meeting of November 22nd, 2021. Krista, have we complied with FOIA?
Yes, sir, we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Krista, would you call the committee roll?
I'd be happy to. Mr. Ames?
Present.
Mrs. Becker? Tammy?
Here.
Mr. Lennox?
Here.
Mr. Stanford?
I'm here.
And Councilman Brown is with us today as well, sir. Oh, and Mr. Harkins, Chairman Harkins, unfortunately could not be here. He sends his best regrets.
Thank you, Krista. Krista, does staff have any changes to the published agenda?
No, sir, there are no changes to today's agenda.
Committee, do you have any changes to the proposed agenda? If there are none, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please raise your right hand. Thank you. We have minutes in your package from October 25th, 2021. Are there any recommended changes, additions, or deletions? If there are none, I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Krista, do we have any appearance or comments from citizens?
No, sir, we had nobody sign up to address the committee today, nor did we have anyone submit any comments via the Open Town Hall portal.
Thank you. I then will move to unfinished business. We have one agenda item. It is a discussion of the Sandalwood Food Pantry and use of town-owned property. Ann Siren will present. Good morning, Ann.
Good morning. I'll just share my screen here. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. Good morning again. For the record, I'm Ann Siren, Interim Comprehensive Planning Manager. Dr. Nanette Pearson, who's the director of the Sandalwood Community Food Pantry, is also on the line and available if you have any questions. This morning, I'd like to review the background of this request, also a review of the Sandalwood Food Pantry itself and their request, and additional information about a town-owned property we previously discussed, and questions for you to consider today. The town received this request in late 2020 from Dr. Pearson with the Sandalwood Food Pantry, seeking a partnership to locate a permanent disaster-resilient food pantry facility on town-owned property. Today, we're seeking committee feedback and direction for this request, including consideration of the following questions. Does the committee support the exploration of this partnership with Sandalwood, including the potential use of town-owned property? And if yes, what information, in addition to what was included in your packet and discussed at today's meeting, would the committee find useful in considering this request? Some of that additional information may include the financial position of the pantry's business plan, their facility plan, and details related to that. It may include parameters from the committee on expectations for town-owned property options, including the size, location, and compatibility with surrounding properties in the neighborhood, and any existing restrictions on the town-owned property. So we'll look at some background information. The Sandalwood Food Pantry is a 501c3 volunteer-based organization. It was established in 2009 to serve hungry children in the Sandalwood Terrace development. Since that time, the pantry's expanded and relocated 5 times, and it's currently located in the Queen Chapel AME Church on Beach City Road. They serve approximately 950 clients, and they're seeking to relocate to a larger permanent facility in the Mid-Island or North Island area. And they've requested consideration to locate this facility on a town-owned property. The facility they desire is about 2,000 square feet, and it would be disaster resilient, and it would require at least 1 acre of land. Dr. Pearson has raised $425,000 for this project to date. This request was previously brought before the committee on March 22nd of this year. At that meeting, town staff shared preliminary options with the committee, which included the potential use of the town-owned Otter Hole property off Pembroke Drive, as well as the former Children's Center site on Matthews Drive. While the committee expressed interest in the potential use of the Matthews Drive site, today we'll share additional information with you that may impact the potential use of this site, including the stated purpose for why we acquired the property and expectations for its future use, buffers from adjacent wetlands, access to the site, and potential traffic impacts. The Matthews Drive site was acquired in a land swap with the Children's Center when they built their new facility near Jarvis Creek Park. It was acquired to provide additional right-of-way to build the Matthews Drive Marshland Road roundabout, with the balance of the site to remain as open space. Acquiring the site resulted in a stated reduction of 193 PM peak hour trips and 10,500 square feet of non-residential development. A wetland is located on a portion of the site, and another wetland is located near the site. And the buffers from these wetlands could significantly reduce the site's buildable area. Access to the site may require using an unimproved drive on a different adjacent town-owned property. And additional research is needed to understand traffic impacts if this site is used, including impacts to the roundabout, which is very close. So again, today we're seeking committee feedback and direction for this request, including consideration of these following questions. Again, does the committee support exploration of this partnership, including the potential use of a town-owned property? And if yes, what information, in addition to what we discussed today, what was included in the packet, would the committee find useful in considering this request? In considering that additional information, whether the committee wants to consider using that information as the framework to consider and vet similar requests in the future for the use of town-owned property. Are there any questions I can answer?
Oh, I think there's going to be a number of questions. Thank you, Ann. Committee, Alex, Tammy, Glenn, and David, what are your questions and initial comments?
Oops.
I'll be happy to go first, I guess. First of all, I recognize that the food pantry provides a very valuable service to our community, and I support the idea of developing a partnership with them. I'm not clear, unfortunately. I wasn't asked to join this meeting until about 5 minutes ago, so I did not see the background information. Can someone bring up the site plan for this Marshland Drive property?
Sure. We don't have a site plan, but I'll bring up the survey if you give me just a second.
Thank you.
Okay. Can you see the survey on my screen?
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
All right, I see the wetland behind. The remainder of the property is, it looks like 0.96 acres. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and the access to the property is from the adjacent 40-foot road easement, which is also on town-owned property, as I see it. So that would provide access, assuming that we agree with the use of this property for this purpose. I guess the main things, first of all, are there any restrictions on this property that as a result of the acquisition, which would limit its development for this purpose?
There are no legal restrictions, sir.
Good. Then partnership is an interesting concept here. I am assuming that we're talking about a long-term lease of the property to the food pantry, which would make sense versus a fee simple sale. Assuming that that is true, the town is going to need to require that there be liability insurance maintained by the food pantry on this property. with the town being identified as an additional insured on the property. The amount of the liability insurance, I would say, is to be determined. But I would be inclined to start somewhere around $1 million, I think. Then we need to have the right of inspection of the property over time to make sure that it is in compliance with the LMO, as well as in compliance with health restrictions that apply to this type of food provider operation. I think this is a worthy project of further development, and I look forward to working with the food pantry as it moves forward. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Glenn. And Ann, you mentioned that Dr. Pearson is on this call. I'd like to open it up to her now before we go further with committee comments and give her the opportunity to make any comments in addition and to yours.
Good morning, gentlemen and Tamara.
Good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Pearson. What would you like to add?
I'd like to add that I wish you a blessed Thanksgiving, and I'm excited about having this dialogue today. What I would like to add is I believe that this collaboration with the town will be time efficient, cost effective. It will do everything by blending together the underserved and all of us to really feel a sense of balance in the community. The Sandalwood Community Food Pantry is a place that so many have come to trust, and I believe they trust me, and I think I make good decisions. And so I very much long to have a collaboration with our town, because I think our town does a heck of a good job serving.
Dr. Pearson, would you comment on what you see on the island in terms of the demand for your services?
Right now I see, I serve a good amount of, I'd say 75% are working poor. We all know the minimum wage. It's not $7.25, although that's federal. It's gone up in a lot of the places, but it's still not making ends meet when my clients have 2 jobs. Maybe they make $20 an hour with 2 jobs. Sandalwood Community Food Pantry provides approximately, I do a breakdown every week, between $250 and $400 a week. That's over $1,000 a month in supplies. And that is good, healthy protein from Dave and Chris at Piggly Wiggly, fresh farm grade produce from West Campbell at the corner, basic needs, diapers for the babies, so much that they're able to then take that $1,000 that they're able to be saved coming to the pantry and put it toward their rent, because their rents have gone up. When I started years ago, their rents were $56.25. They've actually gone up to $9.50, $9.75. Some rents are over $1,000. And so what's happening is 2 families are moving into a place. Families. So I think this has really benefited them greatly. And I can tell by every week, it's only once a week. So it isn't going to be a place that's going to have constant activity and lots of people. It's once a week. And the clients have said that they would not have been able to make ends meet had it not been for us weekly distributing what we're able to. So I can say it's a very worthy project. We also do voter registration. We registered voters that had never voted before in their 70s. We did a DHAC, and one of our own town council, our Ward 1, actually got his Pfizer vaccine, his Johnson & Johnson vaccine at our pantry. So we're a place where people who might not be as trustworthy of what others tell them are very trustworthy of what I say, even, yeah. So thank
Thank you, Dr. Pearson. Please stay close to the call. Other comments from the committee? Tammy?
Sure, I'll jump in. Well, first, Dr. Pearson, thank you for the snip that you just shared with us. And I hope you have a blessed Thanksgiving as well. I have a number of questions, so I'm going to try to make sense of them and make them in a sensible order. Like Len, I have an interest in knowing more what partnership or collaboration entails other than the leasing of the property and then obviously those components related to that. Is there anything more on that part? Are you able to
With
hear me?
regard to
Oh.
going in and out.
Oh, I'm going in. Yeah,
I can.
Go ahead, Dan.
Oh, I was
More
just gonna,
information. I'm sorry. Tamara, you'd like more information on?
Oh, I'm just curious, you know, in terms of partnership, other than the leasing of the property, or what the collaboration fully entails,
Yeah.
that sort of thing,
Thank you.
as a starting
I
point.
think it can be, thank you. I think it can be an incredible educational and informative resource for, again, the underserved. That don't, the information's available, but at times it is disseminated too, but they don't get it. And so it would be a wonderful opportunity for them to get really critical resources that make a difference in their lives.
So I thank you for that. And you should know how much I appreciate the efforts of what you do there. Part of my very young life, we relied on our church to bring our food. And so I understand how critical what you're doing is. And so I understand that piece of it fully, and support all the efforts that help to make sure that people are properly fed and children have a meal on the table. So that aside, I was just, and I don't know if Anne has anything more to offer with, if not, it's just a question for later. I certainly don't need answers to all of these now, but I would like to fully explore what that in particular means. And we talked a lot about the property on Marshland. Is there a similar presentation for the property near Pembroke?
sure, I can share some information about that. If you give me just a second, I'll share my screen.
Okay, well, and I'll just keep going with, I guess, my questions. Although I think really what it comes down to is a decision of what the partnership collaboration means, what the ideal if we should move forward, what the ideal property is. And I thought you laid out some reasonable questions that ought to be explored by all of us as well. Other than that, just getting those answers and seeing the opportunities and making the best choices along the way if we move forward is where I'm going with this. So no stress, but if in time I can get those answers, I'd appreciate it. I'll let someone go ahead and ask their questions while we are here. Thanks.
Thank you, Tammy. Alex and David, anything to add?
Alex, you want to go ahead?
I'll yield to the committee first, and then you can catch me on the back. That's fine, Chairman Lennox.
Okay, I do have several comments. I'm very aware of the food insecurity issue on the island for a variety of reasons. I've been doing some research out of personal interest, and note that there are the Backpack Buddies, Meals on Wheels, Hilton Head Island Deep Well Project, Grateful Heart Soup Kitchen, Holy Family Church Food Pantry, St. Vincent's de Paul Society, Second Helping, Sandalwood Food Pantry, St. Andrews by the Sea, St. Francis by the Sea. So there are a couple of sort of big questions that I have. How does Sandalwood operate in a way that is different than and distinguish its service from those others, i.e., how does it provide a service that others aren't duplicating? A part of that question is, does the town have a role to encourage all those providers to come together if they are overlapping services? How does the food pantry differ from Deep Well, for instance? Secondly, geographic consideration. The food pantry has moved 5 times, although it started in a single place to provide food and assistance to a single area. So I guess my question from a geographical standpoint is, how important is the location to its ability to serve the community? A question that I think anytime you're dealing with a nonprofit, you have to ask is, what is the sustainability of the organization? A couple of detailed questions, and I'd be interested in knowing what the traffic pressures are. Do cars approach the facility at a certain time during the day? In other words, is there a congested situation, or do they come spread out across the entire day? That may have an impact on location. And then I just raised the question, we have a lot of commercial spaces that are available. If we're talking about 2,000 square feet, I wonder whether or not another business plan might be our option, might be to consider a commercial space and simply lease it, and thereby not having to build a new structure on a vacant piece of ground. So I think those are my questions that I think as a town official I have to ask, but I certainly support the entire group of organizations that are assisting in the food insecurity issue on the island, and certainly want to support Sandalwood Food Pantry. I just want to make sure that we're picking the right location for the right reason, and that we are encouraging nonprofits and charities to work together to the greatest extent possible. Thank you, Tom.
Well said, David. Alex?
Yes, thank you. I've got the same, same question that Councilwoman Becker has as far as the other location that's being presented. I understand that there may be some complications with the Old Children's Center being so close to the roundabout. So I'd like to, dive a little deeper in other options for the food pantry. As far as location is concerned, I think it's gravely important that we consider a location within this Mid-Island development tract, okay? For a couple reasons. I'll start with the fact that this portion of the island does find itself home for a lot of our workforce, okay? Their complexes, I'll name a few here, Wood Lake, Tabby Walk, Sandalwood, Gardens, Oaks, and so on. And the disappearance of the grocery store BI-LO, I guess maybe 4 years ago now, has kind of put even more of a strain on the situation. You know, this part of the island is more so a food desert than anything else. Unfortunately, you find folks traveling to Dollar General, I think it is, to find groceries. Okay, so the fact that Dr. Pearson is providing, nutrition, grade A nutrition, is so critical to this food insecurity problem that we have here. I'd also like to learn more about the partnership, what that's going to look like. To me, this is tying right back to our comprehensive plan, being a connected community. We're connecting those that are able to give with those that need to be given. And I think that there's more opportunity in that partnership also. Dr. Pearson mentioned voter registration. There's a sense of apathy when it comes to civic education. And I think this is also an opportunity for us to improve upon that. Again, I guess the two questions on my mind is location, making sure that we find something that is definitely suitable. And secondly, what the partnership and the details of the partnership really look like. But I am looking forward to learning more and moving this project forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alex. My initial thought was very similar to David's, pertaining to what similar services are being provided island-wide. And I'm going to make an assumption that there is significant overlap, but I'm also going to assume that the demand is increasing such that we probably have an ongoing need for additional services such as the food pantry. Is there any discussion, or has there been any discussion, either Ann or Dr. Pearson, about these different groups working in a consolidated or coordinated way? And is there any benefit in that happening?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Wonderful questions. With regard to Deep Well, Sandy and Gina come to visit me often, and they're amazed out of the hundreds in our line, how last time they visited, there was only one who they knew from theirs. And it's quite amazing because you would think it's all the same people going to the two places, but it isn't. It's very different. The other thing, this morning early, I got a call to get 20 more turkeys that Deep Well didn't need, and we need. So I said, thank you, Sandy. So they're delivering them to Sandalwood tomorrow morning. So we collaborate, but it's a very different. Deep Well is incredible for the clients in that they pay their rents, their utilities. I'm talking about maybe just once a year, and in the COVID, maybe twice, but they do larger cost items, but not food like a free choice pantry with fresh. They'll deliver, maybe they'll bag them every month, specific amounts of food. But the difference with Sandalwood, it's very community oriented. It's very, I can tell you 13 years ago, the people I served didn't even know how to at times socialize with one another. The skills of socialization that they have learned and adopted and embraced is incredible. It brings them joy. We are one tribe at Sandalwood. There are differences in race and justice and this, but at that pantry, they are all treated equally and fairly, and they really come feeling joy. They don't feel needy. So it's incredible. The move 5 times have always been to address David Ames's great questions. 5 times in the north section, and as Alex Brown said, that area is so needy. I started at Sandalwood Terrace Apartments 13 years ago when a little boy was stabbed and murdered. It was a mistaken identity. Everything went in lockdown. And it's the gardens, it's Sandalwood, it's the Oaks, and then it's a lot of my Gullah Geechee people all through the Gumtree Road, the Squire Pope Road where I live. That's an enormous, we've really become like a family, but hundreds of people. And again, so the north end is critical. Down on the south end, you'll find a lot of churches. We are not a church. We are non-denominational, very different. We're not church-based. I'm a 501(c)(3) non-denominational functioning. But a lot of the churches on the south end are there. They do soup kitchen, they do
I'm sorry, Miss Pearson's internet is spotty, so it seems like she's frozen.
Okay,
need that full week of lives for the family. So very different. Sustainability 13, and even when they thought it was done.
let me continue while we try to reconnect with Dr. Pearson. I think David's comment about existing buildings ties into a comment and question I would have. And do we have anticipated project costs for this 2,000 square foot building?
No, sir, that's something I direct to Dr. Pearson to answer.
Okay, I think for us to proceed in this discussion, we would want to know what the project costs are. And to Glenn's comment, how appropriate would it be to enter into a land lease as either all or part of the partnership with the food pantry? That being said, I'd be interested to know if Dr. Pearson had the opportunity to explore the existing rental market in the north end or in and around Matthews Drive. Specifically, are there any available 2,000 square foot buildings that are either vacant, underutilized, and currently being offered for lease? And is that an option to building new?
Can you hear me, Glenn?
Yes, yes.
Yes, we did look at other options just recently. The reason we wouldn't want another building, commercial building, is because that structure, the whole idea to this resiliency and the building of a resilient pantry, which is very much like regular buildings, but it would withstand a Cat 2, 3, 4, 5 hurricane. It would really, it's the future of where with sea level rise, with climate change, so much. So in that sense, we didn't want to have to look at a building that was already standing. We looked at some property with the building standing that would be torn down, and the cost was really unbelievable. The last one I looked at a couple weeks ago, I think the gentleman wanted, it was on Gumtree Road, I think he wanted 800,000, and that was before tear down. Granted, he paid 240, but everyone's willing to, they're allowed to say what it is they want for it. So we did look at options, but just a building already up wouldn't be the right thing. And again, the problem with that one was the property.
Dr. Pearson, I want to comment and compliment you on starting your development campaign and raising $450,000 toward this project. Have you had the chance yet to do some preliminary estimates as to what the project cost, excluding land, would be?
Yes, it would be $250,000 to $300,000.
$100
Can you hear me,
a
Glenn?
foot.
This is impossible. Can I just,
J&R Block, I asked that they consider that I was a nonprofit feeding the hungry. Oh.
Okay, and Anne, have we received the food pantry's financial statements?
No, sir, we have not.
I think that would be something that we would want to verify the ability to be certain that the food pantry has ongoing sustainability. And perhaps in addition to that, a copy of the business plan. Glenn?
Thank you. I'm concerned about one thing here that's occurred to me during this discussion. I appreciate the comments of my colleagues here, all of which is very useful to us, but are we creating a precedent here? Are we going to do this with the Sandalwood Pantry, and next week or next month, someone comes along and says, well, you've got to do it for us too? We need to just think about that. I don't want that to get in the way of approval of some sort of partnership with Sandalwood, but I think we need to be careful about how we handle that. Then my other comment is I haven't heard an answer yet, either from Ann or Sean, if they have it, about what is the comparative benefit of each of the locations that are under consideration. Whereas which one is better from a traffic point of view, an access point of view, that sort of thing. Thank you.
Sean?
Yeah, let me first jump into that. When we came before the committee back in March, we had been working initially under the direction of the former town manager. We looked at a couple of sites, and the old Otter Hole site on Pembroke Drive, and the Children's Center site were two that surfaced and had some support. I think at this point, I'd like to say that those two sites still may be appropriate, but we're trying to sort of back it up a little bit and make sure you have the information you need to understand if this is a partnership that you'd like to support. There's more work to do on the specific sites. And there's a lot of information and questions that have come up here today specific to the Children's Center site that we would give you. We can give you information about the Otter Hole site that was shared back in March and included in your packet, I believe, again, for today's meeting. But I'm a little reticent to say we've found the site and that these two might be the only two sites to consider. If we can back up and get the information you need to understand if this partnership is something you want to pursue, then we can move into that next stage of exploration with sites, as we move forward. And then if you do ultimately pick a site, we can move into the specific details around an arrangement, lease, or so forth. So I think that's where we're at. Hopefully I answered your question.
Sean, I want to think about whether we want to continue to use the terminology partnership.
Mm-hmm.
This would not be a town operation. I think the way to refer to this is a land lease with approval of a business plan. Thank you. I'm done.
Yes, sir. Understood.
Tammy?
So Glenn was reading my mind. And most of you have spoken to the same point. We're a limited government, so supporting the good work that the nonprofits do, and certainly making sure that children and families are fed is an important endeavor. And to that 100%, I agree. The idea of any expansion on government, I would not agree. And so that partnership or collaboration does become incredibly important, how we're defining that. I would also like to back up, and there was a lot of great conversation here. And 2 properties have been identified as potentials, but I would venture to say that there may be others. And we might have standing commercial buildings that would withstand hurricane force that might be appropriate as well if we were to go along those lines. The other question I have, and I think, Tom, you started down that road, is the fundraising activity, and all of those details are critically important. And one detail that I haven't heard about is the number served, and I may just have missed it. It's very possible. So do you have a number served? I got the numbers on how much food is distributed and how valuable that is, and how that money is offset then for other necessary expenses for living. But I didn't hear necessarily, or don't recall the number served.
953 families.
900, is that a month? 950.
That's throughout the year. Monthly, weekly, we get about 460 people every Tuesday.
Every Tuesday, okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Minimum
thank you.
100.
Thank you. Anyway, those are just my added thoughts.
Oh, we are being asked to support the exploration of a partnership with Sandalwood Community Food Pantry to build a permanent facility on town-owned property. Is that what we want to do as a committee? I think we're struggling with the word partnership, and that may lead us to a point that we don't want to be. Sean, are you okay with the word partnership, or do we want to explore an arrangement with Sandalwood to enter into some sort of transaction, be it a land lease or a fee simple transfer of town-owned land?
Mr. Chairman, great question. Again, I think we'd like to know if you'd like to explore what information you need to make a decision. The request before you was to consider town-owned property for Sandalwood to site a resilient food pantry. I think from staff's perspective, we're not quite ready to recommend a property. I think if the committee recommends moving forward with consideration of town-owned property, it's likely to be a lease somewhere down the road, and partnership is probably too strong a term. It would just simply be a land lease. We've had partnerships with other organizations, Coastal Discovery Museum, Historic Mitchell Freedom Park. We've leased property, and they've implemented. This is similar, maybe not to quite the same scale, but that's where we're at. And the specific request that came from the Sandalwood was, would town council be interested in leasing or an arrangement where they could site the resilient food pantry on a town-owned property? And so I think that's where we're at. Does the committee have appetite for that?
Tom?
Yes, David.
I would support moving forward with the staff's additional research into this situation. I did not get an answer on traffic pressures, and I think that's something that we need to understand. I just don't understand how the food pantry operates. And secondly, Alex brought up the statement that the Mid-Island area was a food desert. And I don't know if that means that our highest priority would be to find property within that area, or whether the Pembroke site is adequate to serve the best needs, the best purposes of Sandalwood. So I think from my standpoint, when the staff comes back with location options, I'd like to understand a little bit more granularly what the requirements are, what the program requirements are for Sandalwood to have a successful operation and to enhance their ability to serve the most families possible. Thank you.
Can I also ask Dr. Person, she mentioned she had looked at a piece of property on Gumtree and that a number of people that come to her establishment are from that general area. Does it make sense that, and this is really a question for her in terms of knowing her clientele, what's the best location so that a bike ride is easy, so that a walk with a stroller is easy, so something like that makes more sense for those who are coming and using this facility. So I think there's more considerations that we should be looking into with the advice of, if we were to consider it. And I really am not here or there, other than the idea that people need to be fed. That we ought to be thinking through a little bit. Anyway, that's it.
Is it the committee's and intent and desire to take this effort to the next step?
I think more information would be helpful. I mean, there are a lot of questions and, I don't think there's anywhere close to being able to say we're ready to do anything, but without questions being answered, there's no way to get there.
So we are open to continuing to explore the option of entering into a land lease or a fee simple transfer of town-owned land to facilitate the construction of a new facility, subject to additional information and certain terms and conditions being met.
I think for me, that was a lot wrapped into that I'm not willing to commit to yet.
Sean, what would you like this committee to do?
So what I've heard of this meeting, there's a lot of questions. I think that we owe the committee to come back with some additional information. Some will need to work with Dr. Pearson to provide, some will have to develop and bring back to you. But how is Sandalwood different? How is there coordination with overlapping services with other organizations? How important is the location? Beyond just the two that we've identified, understand the traffic pressures, the sustainability, get financials, business plan, how the circulation occurs on the site. So I think and I don't want to gloss and say I've missed anything. Also the exploration of existing commercial space, and I know the desire to have a resilient pantry to withstand hurricanes. We can certainly look to see if there's any other options in support of Dr. Pearson's exploration to see if they're available. And then the idea about the precedent, that's a decision I would see for council. But I think once we develop the information that you've outlined, there's a bunch of questions I think that we need to provide you answers to. And with that full palette of information, put you in a position to make a more informed decision. I think it's a premature to commit to leasing a property until this information is developed and brought back to you for consideration.
And I think that's well said and well summarized, and it makes sense. So my recommendation committee would be to take no action, defer back to staff, allow them to gather the information that the committee has asked for, and bring it back to this committee for further study and review.
Tom, may I make one comment before we close?
Yes, David.
I'd encourage staff to consider locations that may benefit not only Sandalwood, but another operation adjacent to the piece of property. So I'm thinking, and again, I don't understand the operations of Sandalwood enough to know if this makes sense. But if Sandalwood were next door to the Boys and Girls Club or the Children's Center, or places where families congregate by necessity during other times of the day, that there may be an efficiency that benefits two organizations rather than just one. Thank you.
Good comment, David. Dr. Pearson, I do have one final question before we move off of this topic. Where would you say your food pantry is as it pertains to capacity? Are you at 80% capacity? Are you at capacity? Or are you in a position to absorb additional families?
We're out of capacity. Since COVID, we've moved our operation outdoors. We couldn't fit the 400, we couldn't fit them inside. The other thing I did want to add, I think it would be critical also for the town council to visit, as Alex Brown does, to visit the pantry like Sandy does to visit it and see on a Tuesday what it feels like, what the whole operation is. It's quite, we're busting out of the seams, but it would be valuable for you to see the people, you know, many of them, and just witness the operation. I think there's no better experience than to actually experience it as opposed to in words. So I invite you all to come to visit on any Tuesday. Again, it's important to know this facility wouldn't be one that's constantly operational, hundreds of people. It would be very, very effective in that in a very small amount of time, I can execute an enormous amount of positive enforcement. The other thing, I will be very honest, in my mind, I guess because I buried so many people there at Union Cemetery, that road is so wonderful and quiet and able to walk to and ride your bicycle to, and it's not dangerous. That's just another thing I would really like the board to even think about the possibility, and I understand if it isn't. But I thank you all for this morning. You have made my vacation with just the time you've spent with me this morning.
Well, Dr.
Tom,
Pearson,
I have one more question for Dr. Pearson. How many volunteers do you have to serve 460 people
Yeah, we have,
on a Tuesday?
We have 80 volunteers, 80 volunteers, and they cycle. So we might have 6 at the produce. We might have 10 at the dry goods and rice, the dry. We may have 2 at the dessert section. We have 3 at the fish, fresh fish. Then we have 2 at the protein. So everybody we have 6 at the clothing. So everybody kind of has their little place.
And what are your hours on Tuesday if we were to visit?
I start set up outdoors at 7:30 a.m. and then we're finished up by 12 noon.
All right, thank you very much.
Dr.
Thank you, Tom.
Pearson, thank you for your thoughtful comments and responses to a lot of questions from this committee. I look forward to taking this to the next step, wherever that may lead us. Ann and Sean, thank you very much for putting this together and for obviously being aware of what the food pantries needs are and what the town's options may be. I look forward to receiving the work for an additional committee meeting in the future. Thank you. That concludes our single agenda item under unfinished business. Is there any other business or are there any other comments to come before the committee? If there are none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you all. We stand adjourned.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Blessed Thanksgiving.